This film begins with a guy named Keem, who is really good at wrestling and has been famous for it since he was a kid. People even call him a prodigy because nobody could beat him. But as he got older, he started losing more matches. Instead of focusing only on wrestling, he started helping his neighbor at a stall. One day, a well-dressed man named Choi Chil-song came to the stall to buy a drink. He left without giving Baek-do his change, which was a lot of money. Then, in the evening, Baek-do was hanging out at a tavern with his friends. They kept telling him how to wrestle better so he could win more matches. Baek-do felt annoyed because most of his friends weren't wrestlers themselves. Meanwhile, at a special event that night, Baek-do saw Cho-saki, who is now a police officer, and Kwok Jin-soo, who used to be a wrestler. They were all there for a reunion. When Jin-soo mentioned that someone younger than Baek-do beat him, Baek-do got upset and started drinking soju, which got him drunk. While he was drunk, Baek-do called his coach, Sung Chul, and said he'd quit wrestling if he didn't win a big championship. After the call, still drunk, he walked home alone and kept shouting the name of his friend Do-sik. The next morning, Baek-do woke up in his room with no memory of what happened. Soon after, he hurried to the wrestling training ground where he met Saki, who was going on patrol. There, Saki reminded him about what happened at the shop and asked him to explain to Sung Chul what he said about quitting wrestling. Baek-do refused because he had been thinking about quitting wrestling for a while. Meanwhile, in Gosun village, the police were removing Chil-song's body from the lake. He had drowned after his car went into the lake. Saki suspected it might be a murder case. At the wrestling training ground, the assistant coach, Mr. Park, drew the wrestling match lineup, and it turned out that Baek-do would be competing against his junior, Lim Dong-sok. A few days later, just before the wrestling competition began, Baek-do saw Sung Chul arguing with someone. His teammate, Keem Bom-soo, told Baek-do to get ready because the match was starting soon. Meanwhile, Baek-do's dad, Keem Ta-baek, and his older brother, Keem Goom-gung, were in the stands to watch and wrestle. When Baek-do started wrestling, he lost in the first round, but he managed to tie the score by winning the second round. In the third round, both Baek-do and Dong-sok seemed to fall at the same time. The referee decided that Dong-sok was the winner, even though many people thought Baek-do should have won. Even though some disagreed, the referee's decision stood and Baek-do had to accept that he lost the match. After the wrestling match, Baek-do went to visit Do-sik's house, which had been empty for a long time. To his surprise, a woman named Yu-kyung came out of the house. Baek-do thought Yu-kyung was Do-sik, even though she had just moved to the village and was living in Do-sik's house. Baek-do felt disappointed when he found out the truth. It made him think back to when they were kids playing together 20 years ago. Back then, he, Saki, Jin-soo, and Do-sik used to play together a lot. Do-sik was known as a cheerful and strong kid, almost like the leader of the children in the village. He could even beat Baek-do in wrestling matches. But things changed when Do-sik's father, Mr. Oh-jun, who was a wrestling coach, got accused of cheating in matches. Even though Mr. Oh-jun was found innocent later on, people in the village still gossiped about it. One night, Do-sik came to Baek-do's house crying. During their conversation, Do-sik asked Baek-soo not to forget her, even though he had become a successful wrestler. After saying this, Do-sik left the village, leaving Baek-do feeling sad. Since then, Baek-do often visited Do-sik's house to remember the good times they had. Now, in the present time, Jin-soo visited the only cafe in the village run by Ju Mi-run. While serving drinks to Jin-soo, Mi-run, curious about Do-sik leaving, asked Jin-soo about it. But Jin-soo warned Mi-run not to talk about Do-sik's name because it was linked to a dark incident in the village's past. Meanwhile, Baek-do told Saki about Yu-kyung, whom he believed was Do-sik. They both secretly observed Yu-kyung from a distance, but Saki pointed out that she couldn't be Do-sik because when she was younger, Do-sik was known as a tomboy who wasn't interested in dressing up. Shortly after, a community meeting was held at Baek-do's house. Baek-do asked his mother, Ma Jin-suk, to find out why Yu-kyung moved to their village. After Jin-suk asked, they learned that Yu-kyung moved for job reasons. Meanwhile, Saki was busy investigating articles about Chil-song's strange death. Despite suspicions from many residents, Saki didn't believe Chil-song was capable of such things, especially since he couldn't find any articles about his death. At the same time, the Seoul police received autopsy results showing signs of strangulation, indicating that Chil-song's death was a murder. On another occasion, Baek-do became more convinced that Yu-kyung was Do-sik when she, now the team manager at the wrestling training ground, seemed upset upon learning Baek-doo had retired. However, Yu-kyung denied being Do-seek and explained she only regretted Baek-doo's decision before leaving him. Shortly after, Baek-doo went to wrestling practice to retrieve his belongings. There, Park announced that Yu-kyung would be the team manager, causing some athletes to be unhappy because they thought she didn't understand wrestling. Without saying much, Yu-kyung showed off her wrestling skills by swiftly handling one of the protesting wrestlers. This made Baek-doo even more convinced that Yu-kyung and Do-seek were the same person. He later learned from Park that Yu-kyung was recruited as the team manager after Sung-chul returned to coaching. At that time, Park suspected Sung-chul felt disappointed because Dong-seok, his favorite wrestler, moved to another team after the championship. Meanwhile, Tae-baek, Baek-doo's dad and a former wrestler, was disappointed with Baek-doo's decision to retire. He challenged his son to a match and encouraged him not to give up on his dream of wrestling. Unexpectedly, Yu-kyung overheard their conversation and later confronted Baek-doo, claiming to be Do-seek. She scolded him for quitting wrestling before becoming a champion. Shortly after, a man named Min Yoon-wook arrived to pick up Yu-kyung. They quickly said their goodbyes, and Yu-kyung asked Baek-doo to keep her identity as Do-seek a secret. It turns out, Yoon-wook and Yu-kyung are detectives pretending to be a married couple investigating Chil-song's death case in the village. After learning that Yu-kyung, who he thought was Do-seek, was married, Baek-doo felt jealous. Mi-run, who noticed Baek-doo's jealousy, asked if Do-seek was his first love, especially since she had seen Baek-doo drunk, calling out Do-seek's name before. There, Baek-doo admitted he didn't remember, because he often forgets things when he's drunk. Since revealing her identity as Do-seek, Yu-kyung suspected Baek-doo of telling others about her, so she often approached him after he talked to someone else. Baek-doo explained he was just asking about the police entrance exam, but when he mentioned Yu-kyung marrying Yoon-wook, she got even more annoyed and hit him without answering his question. Shortly after, Yu-kyung received a message from the Seoul police, saying they found evidence of Chil-song's murder and discovered Sung-chul's body, which was shocking. The police suspect Sung-chul's death is linked to Chil-song's murder at the lake. Many people were unaware of Sung-chul's death, even Park, who only found Sung-chul's resignation letter and left silently. At that time, Park seemed frustrated because they had a wrestling competition in 15 days and needed a new coach. He searched for one, but none of the village's former wrestlers were willing to take the job. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung was busy watching a video of Baek-doo and Dong-seok's match. She noticed Sung-chul's anxious expression, even though his student won the match. At the same time, Yoon-wook, who pretended to be Yu-kyung's husband, tried to gather information about Sung-chul from the locals. According to the villagers, Sung-chul had gambling problems and was frequently pursued by loan sharks for debts. Soon after, Yoon-wook reported this to Yu-kyung, and they suspected Sung-chul might have been involved in fixing the wrestling match with Chil-song. They believe this led to a confrontation between them, resulting in Sung-chul killing Chil-song. One day, when Baek-doo went to the training ground to hand in his resignation letter, he learned that Sung-chul had also quit as coach. This worried him because his friends were preparing for the wrestling championship. Baek-doo warned his friends to be careful around Yu-kyung, their new manager, until the wrestlers stopped Bom-soo from telling her about Sung-chul. At that time, Yu-kyung needed Baek-doo's help to get information, so she trained Bom-soo, who was participating in the championship. Baek-doo learned from Bom-soo that Sung-chul had a fight before a recent wrestling match. He reported this to Yu-kyung, who suspected it was related to Sung-chul's death. Later, Park informed the wrestling team that Jin-soo intended to be the coach, but Yu-kyung disagreed and suggested Baek-doo instead. Jin-soo was upset because he had turned down another coaching offer to work at the village's training ground. Meanwhile, Baek-doo, surprised to hear he might become a coach, asked Yu-kyung why, knowing he wanted nothing to do with wrestling anymore. There, Yu-kyung told Baek-doo she could see he didn't truly hate wrestling, hinting she needed him, which made Baek-doo wonder if she liked him. She then playfully hit him on the head to snap him out of his thoughts. Later on, Chu Mi-suk, Yu-kyung, and Yoon-woo's boss visited Gosun village to check on their case progress. In the report, they found footage of Chil-song fighting on the night he died. Baek-doo happened to see them and followed them without realizing it. Meanwhile, Jin-soo discussed the coaching position with Park. There, Park asked Jin-soo to be patient, as he planned to convince Yu-kyung to accept Jin-soo as coach. On the other hand, Baek-doo, who met Yu-kyung, mentioned seeing her scolded by a woman at her house. Yu-kyung worried her cover would be blown, but Baek-doo thought the woman was Yu-kyung's strict mother-in-law. He also said he would consider her request to become a wrestling coach. The next day, the news spread quickly that both Baek-doo and Jin-soo would become coaches, causing the residents to split into two groups. This even led to Baek-doo's mom, Jin-suk, and Jin-soo's mom, Lee Myun-ja, to stop talking, despite being close before. When Baek-doo met Jin-soo, who wasn't initially interested in coaching, he admitted he'd compete with Jin-soo fairly for the position. So, Jin-soo challenged Baek-doo to a wrestling match to decide who'd be the coach. On the day of the match, everyone was excited to support their favorite. In the first round, Jin-soo beat Baek-doo, but in the next round, Baek-doo won. Before they could start the third round, the police showed up to question Baek-doo about Chil-song's death. In the interrogation room, they showed Baek-doo surveillance footage of him with Chil-song on the night of Chil-song's death. Baek-doo remembered that night when he took change from Chil-song, who had bought drinks from his stall. His story matched Mi-run's, who saw Baek-doo drunk, getting hit by Chil-song's car, and giving him change. Since their stories matched, the police let Baek-doo go home. When Baek-doo left the questioning room, he accidentally saw Mi-suk talking to a police officer. He thought she was Yu-kyung's family, but it turned out she was a police officer. This reminded Baek-doo of seeing Mi-suk on a TV show he used to watch with Do-sik when they were kids. Soon after, Baek-doo hurried home to watch an old video with Do-sik, which featured Mi-suk, Do-sik's idol. Meanwhile, Jin-suk apologized to Yoon-ja for her son taking change from their family stall. Yoon-ja didn't mind and found Baek-doo's innocence amusing. Later, Baek-doo told Yu-kyung that he knew she was a police officer and that Mi-suk wasn't her family, but a police officer she admired. There, Yu-kyung admitted she was indeed a police officer on a mission, and her marriage to Yoon-wook was just part of their plan. Upon hearing that, he felt upset because he realized he had been deceived by Yu-kyung. A few days later, Baek-doo decided to return to wrestling, which made his dad and Coach Park happy. However, Coach Jin-soo didn't seem pleased with Baek-doo's return and often scolded him. Meanwhile, Yoon-wook, who was helping the women in the village, heard people talking about Do-sik but couldn't get any information about her. When Yoon-ja invited the wrestling team to her restaurant, Baek-doo felt hesitant to join because he felt guilty about stealing money from Yoon-ja's family stall. But Yoon-ja encouraged him to let go of the past and join them, even suggesting he patch things up with Coach Jin-soo. During the meal, the athletes discussed Sung-chul, who often borrowed money, including 2.5 million won from Baek-doo. Yu-kyung seemed annoyed that Baek-doo lent him money despite knowing Sung-chul would gamble with it. After the meal, Yu-kyung watched Baek-doo's wrestling match video and noticed Sung-chul whispering something to Dong-sok before the match. The next day, news of Sung-chul's death spread. The police found the wrestling coach's body in a field, and rumors suggested Sung-chul might have been involved in illegal gambling and match fixing, causing Baek-doo to lose against Dong-sok. The wrestlers suspected Sung-chul influenced Dong-sok to win unfairly, and if not for the referee's mistake, Baek-doo could have won. Baek-doo overheard this and asked Yu-kyung if she was investigating the match-fixing case. She confirmed and planned to talk to Dong-sok about what Sung-chul whispered before the match. The next morning, Yu-kyung was on a bus to Seoul to meet Dong-sok when Baek-doo surprised her by joining the trip instead of going to wrestling practice. When they met Dong-sok, Yu-kyung asked about what Sung-chul said to him. Dong-sok confessed that Sung-chul begged him to lose the match against Baek-doo because he feared for his life if Dong-sok didn't comply. At first, Dong-sok thought it was a joke until Sung-chul's death made him regret ignoring the request. He also mentioned seeing Sung-chul arguing with someone unknown and acting strangely during the match, as if someone was watching him from the stands. Before leaving, Dong-sok apologized to Baek-doo for his victory due to a referee's mistake, but Baek-doo didn't mind. At the same time, Saki is busy chasing after a local dog named Snowball, who often disappears to the village lake. He senses something strange about Snowball's behavior. Meanwhile, Yoon-wook visits Mi-run's cafe to learn more about Do-sik. From Mi-run's story, Yoon-wook discovers dark events from the past involving Do-sik, her father, and her father's friend. Mi-run also mentions rumors that Do-sik was Baek-doo's first love. Back with Baek-doo, he confesses to Yu-kyung that he returned to wrestling because of her, leading her to believe he has feelings for her despite his attempts to avoid it. After Yu-kyung returns to the village, she and Yoon-wook discuss the wrestling match-fixing case, suspecting involvement beyond Sung-chul and Chil-song. They focus on the match between Baek-doo and Dong-sok, manipulated by Sung Chul after Chil Song's death. They decide to conduct further investigations to uncover more involved parties. Meanwhile, rumors spread about Baek-doo having a girlfriend after a resident spots him at the bus station with a woman. At that time, Saki overhears this gossip while on patrol. Then, Yu-kyung tries to find clues about the person who watched Sung Chul from the stands, but the lack of surveillance cameras makes it challenging. At the same time, Coach Jin-soo announces that the wrestling tournament draw will be delayed and invites all the wrestlers to his mother's shop for a free meal. Baek-doo, however, has to complete 100 laps before going to Yoonja's shop. There, Yu-kyung reminds Baek-doo to stand up to Jin-soo, who has been unfair to him lately, but Baek-doo doesn't seem bothered by it, which surprises Yu-kyung. Meanwhile, at home, Baek-doo's older brother, Hun-ra, who retired from wrestling, has become a YouTuber. He asks Baek-doo to join him in broadcasting. At that time, Hun-ra's subscribers are curious about Baek-doo after he uploaded a video of Baek-doo's match. Excited, Baek-doo rushes to show the video to Yu-kyung, hoping it might help her in her search. Another day, the wrestling competition draw is announced, and Baek-doo is matched against a strong opponent. However, Coach Jin-soo decides Baek-doo isn't ready to compete and forbids him from participating. Yu-kyung is annoyed by this decision, especially since Baek-doo doesn't protest, assuming Jin-soo must have his reasons. Yu-kyung then advised Baek-doo to stop prioritizing others' feelings over his own and start focusing on his own life. After meeting Baek-doo, she was compelled to sign the form canceling the championship, which Jin-soo had given her. She argued that Jin-soo shouldn't have removed Baek-doo from the championship because he's skilled enough to compete with other wrestlers. Yu-kyung's words made Jin-soo rethink his decision about Baek-doo. Meanwhile, Baek-doo started considering Yu-kyung's advice until he met Jin-soo and expressed his desire to compete. Jin-soo, also meeting with Baek-doo, revealed that he had decided not to remove Baek-doo from the list of wrestlers going to the championship. On the other hand, Yoon-wook, who was with Yu-kyung, learned that Yu-kyung was Do-sik. It made sense to him why she and Baek-doo seemed familiar. He also found an article about Mr. Oh-jun, who was charged with murder 20 years ago. Yu-kyung finally admitted these things and told Yoon-wook about her father, who was the head coach of the wrestling team in Gosun Village. One day, Oh-jun was accused of killing his student, Ju Cheol-young, who refused to follow his orders to lose a wrestling match. Even though there was no proof and Oh-jun was released by the police, people still doubted him and his family. So he asked his daughter to leave the village. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung, after investigating, believed that Cheol-young's death 20 years ago was linked to Chil Song's death. She returned to the village to uncover the truth. That night, Yoon-wook admitted he was suspicious of Mi-run, who often talked about Do-sik. A few days later, Baek-doo went to a wrestling championship, but asked his family not to watch, worried he wouldn't win. When he arrived at the training ground late, he found only Yu-kyung, as his teammates had already left for the match. Soon after, Yu-kyung immediately drove Baek-doo to the wrestling championship, but Baek-doo ate too many snacks on the way and gained weight. This annoyed Coach Jin-soo, who ordered Baek-doo to run to make weight for the competition. Baek-doo even had to run while carrying Yu-kyung to lose weight faster. That evening, during dinner at a beachside restaurant, Yu-kyung received a call from Mi-suk, who mentioned Sung Chul received several calls from a public phone before his death. Shortly after, Baek-doo approached Yu-kyung for a chat. She encouraged him to wrestle with the same winning attitude he had as a child. The next day, Jin-soo and his wrestlers fell ill with food poisoning and couldn't compete in the championship. Baek-doo, the only unaffected athlete, had to compete alone. Despite this, he remained enthusiastic, especially with Yu-kyung in the audience. Just before the match, Yu-kyung received news from Mi-suk that Mi-run was Cheol-young's daughter, who had died 20 years ago. At the same time, Baek-doo tried his best in the wrestling match and won his first match. He looked for Yu-kyung in the crowd to celebrate with her. Meanwhile, Yoon-wook went to Mi-run's cafe to meet her, but it was closed. Mi-run had just arrived back in town with a suitcase. The next day, when Baek-doo qualified for the next round, Bom-soo and Jong-hun informed him that Yu-kyung had to return to Gyeosin for urgent business. This distracted Baek-doo, and he lost in the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung met with Mi-run to explain that her father didn't kill Cheol-young and asked for her help in revealing what she knows about Chil Song's death. Unfortunately, Mi-run refused to share the information and reminisced about her childhood in the village. 20 years ago, young Mi-run used to play with Baek-doo, Do-sik, Jin-soo, and Saki. At that time, she lived with Yu-kyung, a wrestler who had just moved to Gosun Village and joined the wrestling team. In the present, Bakdu and the rest of the wrestling team returned to the village. They praised Bakdu's performance in the match. Despite the praise, Bakdu felt worried because Yu-kyung hadn't responded to his messages. Before leaving, Jin-soo approached Bakdu and praised him, admitting he had been jealous of Bakdu since childhood for always winning matches. Some time later, after having a few drinks, Bakdu went to Yu-kyung's house and kept calling Do-seek's name until Yu-kyung came to stop him. Bakdu scolded Yu-kyung for not watching his match, but she congratulated him and said she was happy to see him so enthusiastic. She encouraged him to keep building his confidence, believing he could win the championship one day. Still under the influence of alcohol, Bakdu didn't seem to listen and suddenly kissed Yu-kyung. She felt embarrassed and shocked and hit Bakdu to snap him out of it. The next morning, Bakdu couldn't remember what happened the night before and wondered why he had a bruise on his forehead. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung felt nervous after Yoonwook mentioned Bakdu's name, remembering the kiss. Later, Bakdu came to pick her up for wrestling practice. On the way, Yu-kyung asked Bakdu about the events from last night, but he couldn't recall them. She asked him to try to remember, especially the part where he met Chil-song on the night Chil-song died. After learning that Yu-kyung would grant his one wish, Bakdu eagerly tried to recall the incident. He even drank something believed to improve memory. After practice, Yu-kyung helped Bakdu wipe his sweat, which unexpectedly triggered his memory of kissing her the previous night. Feeling embarrassed, he quickly left. Meanwhile, Yoonwook saw Mi run leaving with a black bag and tried to follow her. However, he lost track of her at the market. On patrol with his colleague, Saki noticed Bakdu talking to himself by the roadside, seemingly reenacting a scene to remember the night he met Chil-song. Slowly, Bakdu starts recalling events from that night, including seeing Mi run in Chil-song's car. With this memory, Bakdu meets Yu-kyung and unexpectedly finds Mi run with her. There, Mi run told Yu-kyung that she returned to Gosun Village to uncover the truth about her father's death. She believes Chil-song, after arriving in the village, resumed the wrestling match fixing and illegal gambling, making her suspect him of Chil-yong's murder. One day, Chil-song met Mi run at the cafe and confessed that Chil-yong's death was partly his fault. Not understanding his words, Mi run was taken by Chil-song in his car. He urged her to leave the village because Chil-yong's killer was still around. On the way, they encountered a drunken Bakdu and Chil-song got into a fight over a phone call. After dropping Mi run off, Chil-song asked her to meet him later to explain how Chil-yong died. Sadly, the next day, Chil-song was found drowned in the lake with his car. In the present, Mi run gave Yu-kyung the address Chil-song had given her. She also handed over a crime book and the money Chil-song received as an apology for Chil-yong's death. Before leaving, Mi run asked Yu-kyung to find the person who murdered her father 20 years ago. On another day, a resident saw Bakdu with Yu-kyung at the terminal and started spreading rumors about them having an affair. This caused a stir because Yu-kyung was believed to be married to Yoonwook. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung gave the money and Chil-song's crime book to Mi-suk, who decided to send her subordinates back to Seoul as they had gathered many clues about Chil-song's death. Yu-kyung refused to leave until she caught Chil-song's killer, so Mi-suk gave her and Yoonwook 10 days to complete their task in the village. At the same time, rumors about Bakdu and Yu-kyung's affair spread throughout the village. The male residents even gathered to discuss the news. The village elder, Pil-do, reminded everyone to keep the rumors from Tae-baek's family to avoid trouble with Bakdu's father. At the practice site, Jin-soo heard gossip about Bakdu supposedly having an affair with Yu-kyung. At first, Jin-soo didn't believe it, but seeing them acting close during practice made him suspicious. He warned Bakdu not to tease other people's wives. Bakdu didn't take Jin-soo's warning seriously because he was unaware of the rumors. On another occasion, Bakdu went to see Yu-kyung in her room, but she sent him away, saying she was busy trying to complete her mission in the village within 10 days. Feeling down, Bakdu headed home, but along the way, he noticed people staring at him strangely. Some residents even seemed to be signaling to Goom-gung to warn his younger brother, leaving Bakdu confused. At the same time, Yoonwook experienced a similar situation as people looked at him with pity. On the other hand, Mi run informed Yu-kyung that the calls to Chil-song came from a public telephone in the village area. She also warned Yu-kyung to be cautious because rumors about her and Bakdu's affair were spreading. After Mi run left, Yu-kyung visited the address Mi run had given her. Unfortunately, she couldn't find the tenant because the building owner didn't have the tenant's contact information, as they paid in cash. All Yu-kyung found was a used car trading card. Meanwhile, Baek-doo seemed unfocused during practice as he was thinking about Yu-kyung leaving the village soon. After practice, he talked to Yu-kyung about the rumors. She advised him to deny them to prevent further trouble. Baek-doo felt disappointed, hoping for something more than just friendship between them. Baek-doo felt sad as he walked home, only to encounter his mother scolding him in public because of the rumors. Frustrated, he angrily yelled at the residents, asking them to stop spreading lies. Remembering what happened to Do-sik in the past, he couldn't bear the gossip. Feeling irritated by the rumors, Baek-doo hurried to Yu-kyung to express his feelings for her, vowing not to let her leave like before. However, he asked her not to respond because he wasn't ready. The next day, Yu-kyung couldn't focus on Yoonwook's explanation of Chil-song's case, as she was still thinking about Baek-doo's confession, her cheeks turning red at the memory. She received news from the Seoul investigation team that they had found Chil-song's phone number through the used car trading card she found. This discovery could help trace Chil-song's calls through satellite history. On another note, Saki meets Jin-soo to discuss rumors about Baek-doo. Some say Baek-doo talked about Do-sik to divert attention from his alleged affair with Yu-kyung. Jin-soo disagrees. Meanwhile, Baek-doo asks Yu-kyung to let him join the team investigating Chil-song's death. She doesn't answer in questions when he started liking her. Baek-doo jokingly says since he was 1 year old, earning a playful hit from Yu-kyung. Jin-soo, observing from afar, notices their closeness, reminiscent of young Baek-doo and Do-sik. Soon after, Mi-suk informs Yu-kyung that the number contacting Sung-chul and Chil-song is the same. At practice, the wrestlers ask about the rumors. Baek-doo casually responds that he only loves Do-sik. On another note, Saki got another report about Snowball running off again, suspecting someone intentionally letting the dog loose. He advised the owner to set up a camera to catch the culprit. After some thought, Yu-kyung finally agrees to let Baek-doo join her investigation team. However, Yoonwook disagrees and challenges Baek-doo to a drinking contest. If Baek-doo wins, he can join the team. Sadly, they both end up drinking too much and pass out. The next day, Saki has to retrieve Snowball again because the owner didn't install a camera. Annoyed, Saki tells the owner not to involve the police unless they agree to install a camera. While dealing with Snowball, Saki spots Baek-doo leaving Yu-kyung's house after getting drunk. He reports it to Jin-soo, who ignores the news completely. That evening, Saki spotted Baek-doo and Yu-kyung heading to Mi-run's cafe, so he quickly told Jin-soo about it. Jin-soo seemed calm but suspected that Yu-kyung might be the Do-sik they knew from before. To confirm this, Saki invited Jin-soo to the cafe where Baek-doo and others were discussing the investigation into Chil-song's case. When Saki and Jin-soo arrived, they bluntly asked if Yu-kyung was the Do-sik they knew. Feeling mocked, Yu-kyung got annoyed and admitted she was Do-sik, then chased after Saki to hit him. To everyone's surprise, Jin-soo and Saki found out that Mi-run was their childhood friend who had moved away. With all the truth revealed, Baek-doo's friends finally joined the team investigating Chil-song's death, suspected to be linked to the person who killed Mi-run's father 20 years ago. To solve the murder mystery, they need an old phone that belonged to Chil-song. There, Saki admits he found a phone near the lake while looking for his missing dog, Snowball. He had set Snowball free on purpose to see what the dog was up to by the lake. He thought Snowball might find a body, but instead the dog found an old phone. Besides that, Snowball's owner noticed the dog barking in the middle of the night, leading Saki to think the dog might have witnessed the murder. After explaining this, Saki gave the phone to Yoonwook, who would pass it on to the forensic team for investigation. On another occasion, a mysterious man tried to set Snowball free, but the dog's owner caught him in the act, and the man flitted. The next day, the owner told Saki about it and described the man as big, like a wrestler. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung and Yoonwook watched Hundra's vlog for clues. With Saki's information about the man releasing Snowball, Yoonwook suspects he might be the murderer. Because of what happened, two people ended up asking the villagers questions. But oddly, Pil-doo didn't want to say where he was on the night Chil-song died. Even though Pil-doo didn't say anything, Yu-kyung didn't want to accuse him without strong proof. That Mi-run suddenly said she was Chul-young's daughter. This made Yu-kyung tell her friends to tell everyone so the real bad person would come forward. Even though it might put Mi-run in danger, she didn't care. To make sure she was safe, Jin-soo was told to watch over her from anyone who might want to hurt her. After everyone found out about Mi-run, they all came to the cafe to see if it was true. The next day, Jin-soo overheard his mom saying that 20 years ago, the last person to see Chul-young was Pil-do. Right away, Jin-soo told Yu-kyung. Then Baek-do admitted he saw Pil-do near Snowball's cage last night. Yu-kyung couldn't just accuse Pil-do without solid proof. Later, when Baek-do got home, he saw Pil-do talking with Tae-baek. Baek-do tried to listen in on their conversation from inside. Pil-do mentioned seeing Chul-young heading to Do-sik's house 20 years ago. He regretted not stopping him, thinking maybe Mi-run's dad wouldn't have been killed. Jin-soo, who was supposed to be with Mi-run at the cafe, got called away. Meanwhile, at the cafe, a man named Lee Kyung-moon attacked Mi-run, asking for Chul-song's phone. In this tense moment, Mi-run confronts Kyung-moon, asking if he's the one who killed her father 20 years ago. According to Kyung-moon's memory on that fateful night, Chul-young met Chul-song and Kyung-moon on the hill to refuse their offer of being involved in match-fixing wrestling. This refusal angered Kyung-moon, leading him to brutally beat Chul-young to death. Kyung-moon also confessed to killing Chul-song after he scolded Kyung-moon for trying to raise the stakes in illegal gambling. Feeling insulted and greedy, Kyung-moon ended Chul-song's life. Shockingly, all their conversations were recorded on Chul-song's phone, which Snowball, the dog, witnessed. At that time, Kyung-moon deliberately sets Snowball free every night, hoping the dog will lead him to Chul-song's phone, now in police hands. Meanwhile, Yu-kyung accidentally finds an old photo and remembers taking it with Saki's new camera. She asks Kyung-moon to take another photo before he left with Chul-song. This triggers Yu-kyung's realization that Kyung-moon is the murderer she's been seeking, so she hurries to the cafe. Just like Jin-soo, who rushed to the cafe when he couldn't get hold of Mi-run, they didn't find Kyung-moon there. He had already escaped. After this, the police declared Kyung-moon a fugitive, and everyone learned that Yu-kyung was actually Do-sik because Yu-kyung had recently gone back to Seoul to get an award for her hard work. A few days later, Baek-do visited Do-sik's house and was surprised to see Yu-kyung waiting there. He encouraged her to go back to Seoul right away and chase her dream of becoming a great police officer like Mi-suk. Before they said goodbye, he also invited her to come watch him compete and respond to his feelings that he had shared with her the other day. Yu-kyung agreed to Baek-do's request. Unfortunately, on the day of the wrestling match, the police found out where Kyung-moon was hiding, so Yu-kyung couldn't make it to Baek-do's match. People who wanted to watch the match in person couldn't make it because of heavy traffic, so they had to listen to the match on the radio. Despite this, Baek-do kept trying his best in every match. He made it to the final round where he would compete against Dong-sok. With advice from Yu-kyung, who suggested he use his speed, Baek-do finally won the deciding round and became the champion for the first time. During the winner's interview, Baek-do kept his promise by talking about Do-sik. Meanwhile, Yoon-wook told Mi-run that they caught Kyung-moon. Baek-do, feeling disappointed because Yu-kyung wasn't there to see his match, went to Do-sik's house. He was surprised to find Yu-kyung waiting for him with a bruised face after arresting Kyung-moon. She apologized for missing his match, but Baek-do was more concerned about her injury. After Baek-do asked Yu-kyung about her feelings, she shyly confessed that she also likes him. In the end of the show, Baek-do and Yu-kyung joined the others at Mi-run's cafe to celebrate catching Kyung-moon. Saki notices that both Baek-do and Yu-kyung's lips are red, realizing they had just kissed. Later, they all go to the beach together. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is even in the midst of solving crimes, remember if you're stuck in traffic, you might miss the chance for a smooch. So always keep your eyes on the road, and maybe you'll catch more than just the bad guys.